Thank you, Jamie. Laurie Ross joins us again this morning, and her topic is reflections on higher values for living a moral life. Tēnā koutou Unitarians au tāmaki makara. Tēnā koutou ngā manuhiri. Ko tuku inoa, Shirin Caldwell, no Okitipuna, England, kei te noho o ke tāmaki makaura, Auckland. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Auckland Unitarian Church. Welcome all fellow church members and visitors. Welcome if you join us via Zoom or physically present in the church where Auckland Unitarians have gathered here since 1901. Welcome also to those of you who are joining us remotely in our building, and to those who may view our service online at a later time. All our services are available on the website. If you are a first-time visitor, twice welcome, and thank you for choosing to share this time with us in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. For those who join us in the physical church here, please join us for tea and coffee after the service. It is our sacrament of hospitality. My name is Shirin Caldwell, and the church has been my sanctuary here for over 40 years. I first met Laurie, our speaker this morning, in the 1990s, when she ran a series of dances for universal peace in our church. Laurie has been a lifelong Unitarian. Our opening words this morning are by Karen Johnson. She is a Unitarian Universalist minister, and her title is Life, the Sea of Moral Injury. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power, some in pain. We are all swimming to the other side. Well, here I am again, stopped at a traffic light, a sea of cars surrounding me, a handful of vehicles ahead of me. Stationed on the medium strip, someone visibly in need, likely unhoused, walks the line of momentarily stopped cars, cardboard sign in hand, asking for money. I find myself praying, not for their well-being, not for solutions to our broken housing system. Instead, I perversely pray that the light will change before they arrive at my rolled-up window. Perhaps you follow the dictum of 19th century poet Walt Whitman, give alms to everyone who asks, and this frees you to know that you have done your part. Perhaps because you intentionally support community organizations that provide direct service or address systemic issues, you pass by and experience no unease. Perhaps. Personally, I swim clumsily between these two approaches. I find myself struggling to keep my head above these ethical waters. Because any liberation must be collective liberation. I know it's critically important to keep at the center of our attentions those most directly impacted. That being true, I also come to believe that no matter one's privileged status at this point in late capitalism, with its rot of the social safety net, we are all constantly swimming in a sea of moral injury. No matter our social isolation, we regularly witness or fail to prevent harm caused by systems not of our making. This causes us to grapple with not only our place in the shadow sides of the interdependent web of all existence, but also the harm we experience. In response, I sometimes turn away, scroll on and on, numb out, Sometimes I pray for the wrong things. Yet my faith, values and principles tell me that there is a different option, to turn inwards. It becomes a message from the interdependent web of existence. Harm of one is harm to all. When I can pause, even just for a moment, I can recognize my unease for what it is. Not a reason for disconnection or seed of resentment, but a ringing hello from the interdependent web of all existence, reminding me of a deep connection with my fellow earthling, a dogged attempt to stir me from the illusion of separation, an abiding call to save me from the false promise of safety by materialistic individualism. When I can position myself to hear this universal and universalist message, I am better able to know which direction to swim. My prayer, Spirit of Life, may it be true that there is a moral arc of the universe. May it be true that when we come together, centering those most harmed, we can bend it towards justice. May we recognize each other as we swim in these roiling waters of late-stage capitalism, being for each other rafts and bridges and islands of respite, till we make it to the further shore, till we make it to the other side. I'd still like to invite Rachel to come and light the chalice for us. And our words come from the Reverend Linda Hart. We kindle a small flame in the dark of the year, remembering the promise of life abundant, of a possible peace. We pause in this day of mystery to tell stories, to sing songs, and to bring more light into the world. Please join me in reciting the covenant that Kate will now put up on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Our reading this morning is called My Moral Life by Mark Halliday. 2 years hence, when I'm ready, after one more set of poems about my beautiful confusion, after I've read Anna Karenina and Don Quixote and the first volume at least of Proust and one big novel by Thomas Mann, say 3 years hence, after I've written an essay about the word enough, after I've done something so delectable, weaving together phrases from Henry James and Bob Dylan, after I've written an amazing meditation on Louis Bruxelles, and after I've spent a month in Frankfurt, Michigan, being very real, thoughtful, and full of perspective and fresh cherry pie, then in 4 years at the most, I see it there ahead of me, casting a silver shadow, back upon me now, bathing me in its promise, validating the self that will arrive at it in 4 years or less, maybe 2 years. Glimpsing it there is sometimes like living it, almost, and feeling justifiably proud. Water pollution and toxic waste and air pollution, like poverty of black people in my city, the nuclear arms industry in my more moral life, these things are not just TV. They push my poems to the edge of my desk. They push Henry James into a sweet corner. They pull me to meetings and rallies and marches and meetings and rallies and marches. There I am on the steps of City Hall, disappointed by the turnout, but speaking firmly into the local news microphone about the issue, the grim issue, when I'm ready, 4 years from today. Silver Shadow. I will now introduce our speaker for this morning. Laurie attended Unitarian Sunday School since the 1950s, at age 5 in Ontario and Quebec in Canada. When she was 12 years old, the family moved to Christchurch in 1962, but there were no Unitarian meetings at the time. She became a member of the Auckland Unitarian Church in 1994, when Max and Linda Moss were our ministers. And she's been attending services from time to time over the last 30 years. She held a series of Saturday morning sessions teaching the sacred songs and circle dances of universal peace. This practice is meditation and celebration of the major religions and spiritual ideals that nurture the heart. And I remember coming to them and enjoying them so much. She loves reading, thinking, and exploring ideas to understand humanity. Today, Laurie speaks on higher values for living a moral life. Welcome, welcome to the pulpit.
Let's start with Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, and his critique of pure reason. He says, "Two things fill the mind with ever-increasing wonder and awe, the more often and the more intensely the mind is drawn to them. They are the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Now, let's look at the three questions that raises. What are higher values and what is the moral law? Why do we want or need them? And how do we develop these values? Simple answers are that higher values are the ideals, beliefs, and principles for living a good and moral life as individuals and as societies. We want values because it is in the nature of being human for our intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. We develop higher values through philosophical inquiry into what is true and good within ourselves and in humanity. It is a lifelong journey of inner reflection upon our experience, our study, knowledge, dialogue, and questioning what we think and why. Science versus religion. This talk today was inspired by another talk presented to Unitarians by John Main Donald, in which he discussed Charles Darwin, who grappled with the dichotomy between his scientific knowledge and Christian beliefs in 1859. Empirical evidence of evolution over millions of years disproved biblical authority of how God created life and humanity. However, scientific and religious moral integrity need not conflict. The higher unifying value of science and religion is reverence for life. Science reveals the facts in ever-expanding knowledge of the universe, which inspires religious feeling. Albert Schweitzer was a great man who mastered and harmonized the disciplines of science, music, medicine, and religion in humanitarian higher values. As a theologian and doctor in Africa in 1923, he wrote The Philosophy of Civilization and the Decay and Restoration of Civilization. Our Auckland University science professor John Morton and also renowned business climate journalist Rod Oram are religious men, high Anglicans, who balance the two realms of knowledge. Their higher values, grounded in their religion and community, were enriched by scientific knowledge. Establishing higher moral values is a thought process that need not fit within empirical science, which is a different discipline and realm of knowing. Values do not require scientific proof for validity. However, rational thinking develops higher values. Modern philosopher Karl Popper calls it modest critical rationalism. He explains that doing what is right is an act of faith in reason for moral decisions that empower conscience and reveals the unity of human reason in higher values. Science and technology are regarded as objective and decoupled from higher values that should restrict them to some degree. The development and uses of high science tech needs high ethical standards and regulations to protect humanity from catastrophic consequences. This requires higher values in political policy and practice that prioritize human, environmental health and well-being over and above economic wealth from the untethered freedom of a market-driven technological science. So what are the core values that we all share? I would suggest that they are respect and gratitude for all creation and being human. The values in practice mean, to me, working for a peaceful world based on justice and human rights, stopping violence in our communities and abolishing state-organized violence in warfare, being a Kaitiaki guardian to protect Papatūānuku Earth by ending militarization and pollution of the land, the rivers, the oceans, the air, and outer space. We have one precious life as a human being here on earth. We do not need to believe in God per se, but in the higher values of goodness in humanity and in ourselves. The purpose for living by higher values is not for future spiritual reward in heaven, nor avoiding punishment in hell. The purpose of this life is to learn what it means to be a good human being. The aspiration appeals to rational thinkers, humanists, and those who believe in some form of spirituality, whether traditional or transcendental. I believe we can create heaven on earth now, in this life. It is possible for everyone to have material and political conditions necessary for living a good and moral life. However, that would involve transformation of both the military economic system and the violent social programming of our minds that are creating hell on earth. In addition, people need help to awaken to their true nature of goodness and the courage to create a global culture of goodness. Moral values in society. Human beings have a natural inclination to do both good and bad out of ignorance, or first unconsciously and then intentionally. Social conditioning teaches us to distinguish between them and hopefully to choose what is good and right, and each culture develops the values and rules for living in its society. There are common values to all cultures, like reciprocity, based on the principle of giving, sharing, and exchange. It is part of human nature to create stories around God or higher power of authority and to show ways to earn merit or avoid suffering negative consequences for one's acts. It may involve creating a personal and collective deity or a higher sense of self who provides guidance for us to do the right thing. This is often embodied as rituals and roles and prayers and practices. People may not subscribe to any conventional religion or moral narrative, but they may still recognize the higher values within religions and within themselves. These could be called universal values. The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism provide an example of higher values for individuals and the community. Number 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Fellowship is desirable to nurture these values, and I am grateful for Unitarian fellowship in Auckland, Aotearoa, and the world. Individual higher values. Human beings have the innate capacity to know and develop higher values and live by them out of freedom, not fear. We can recognize truth, goodness, or a higher value when we see or hear it and not know how we know. Intuitive knowledge can be validated through philosophical exercise to provide reasons and arguments supporting insight. The quest for truth, meaning, morals, and higher unifying values through rational thought was developed by Western philosophers in 500 BC, starting with Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato in ancient Greece. Our Western philosophy, Vakapapa, is a legacy of leading thinkers developed over 2,500 years. One great German philosopher in the 1780s who focused on these questions was Immanuel Kant in his books, Critique of Practical Reason, What is Enlightenment, and the Metaphysics of Morals. He explained the limits of reasoning, but also how moral values originate a priori, innate, in reason. He states genuine morality must meet certain criteria as categorical imperatives. This means one must act only according to the maxim by which you would want to be universal law. He says, goodwill is the decisive element in how one's virtues or qualities are used for good or ill. This is directed by the will to good in itself as the highest good that applies to all. It is not taught, but brought to life, to light, through a sense of duty to do the right thing. Kant says, men deserve to be praised or blamed on their motives or reasons for acting rather than on good or bad consequences that their actions produce. People often do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and they often do the wrong thing for the right reasons. Respect is an effect of the law on a person, not its cause. One aligns with original cause or moral principle rather than based on observation and experience, and then applies that principle as a general rule to particular cases. According to Kant, love thy neighbor and thine enemy is not in one's natural inclination, but resides in the will. Thus, a person must decide and then apply this will for goodwill. A simpler statement of a universal value was taught by Jesus. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is still recognized as the golden rule. The higher value is fundamental to the Christian religion through the world for 2,000 years, and a common value in other cultures and religions. A person who has no faith in a personal God, nor belief in an afterlife, may still choose to live according to higher values within or outside of a religion. Spiritual values versus narratives. One does not need to believe in a virgin birth or crucifixion and resurrection story in order to believe in the values that Jesus taught. In fact, the supernatural stories and beliefs may detract from the true values and put people off in a modern secular society. One can reject traditional religious narratives and dogma, but does not need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Social, political values. Cooperation and organization in families, communities, countries, and internationally is essential. People want to live in an orderly society with higher values of freedom, democracy, human rights, and equitable laws. Most agree to do no harm to others and adhere to the laws of the land. Compliance is based on fear of legal punishment and on higher values of justice and fairness. Universal values for humanity. On the international level, our higher values are enshrined in the United Nations Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. And also in the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a framework for governments to ensure all human beings have good food, clean water, sanitation, health, housing, electricity, free from violence, war, and ecological destruction. However, this requires transformation of the global economic order and stopping the abuse of power by multinational and financial corporations. The higher values of the UN are reflected in Unitarian Universalism principles. Number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Implementation of higher values continues to develop through public education and national policies, as well as through the United Nations, international law, humanitarian law, the International Court of Justice, and the International Criminal Court. At the present time, there is huge public attention focused on these UN institutions to stop the Israeli genocide of Gaza, the illegal occupation of the West Bank, end the siege in Gaza, and the apartheid and oppression of Palestinians. There is hope, and we are cultivating that here today because it's deep within ourselves. We realize the need for common values that unite us, whilst maintaining our sovereignty and security as nations and our rights as individuals. Philosopher Kant presented this ideal 300 years ago in his essay, Perpetual Peace, to abolish the barbaric abomination of warfare. Learning higher values. In my own life, I see the influence of Christian teachings from my grandmother Ross in Toronto. Later, I recognized this was the foundation of our Western cultural whakapapa, our moral values. My father, Larry Ross, provided the foundation for my rational thinking in the Unitarian Fellowship of Toronto and Montreal, where I learned appreciation for all religions. My husband, David Theobald, was my teacher in the art of philosophical dialogue and the study of wisdom from philosophers of East and West, and to him I am forever grateful. To be a free thinker and assert noble values of the higher self in the public domain requires courage and practice. We need to promote higher values and human intelligence now, more than ever before, as we face the greatest existential threat to humanity from our high-tech artificial intelligence and space-age war weaponry. My hope is that we humans can evolve our higher intelligence and consciousness and values and the will to good, and make sure that our AI does as well, or that we control the AI. Albert Einstein said, "The most important function of art and science is to awaken the cosmic religious feeling and keep it alive. The human mind that begets science also begets reverence for life, our higher common value that must preside. Through reading, philosophical inquiry, prayer, and meditation, one experiences various transcendent mind states and unity and diversity of all religious values and harmony with nature. This could be called mystical experience, which inspires the study and practice of values. And amongst those values are the qualities to cultivate: the love, the te aroha, the faith, the te wakapono, the peace, the te rangimarie. Through spiritual culture, we often sing together the Maori waiata, te aroha, that nourishes the spiritual values within us. And you may like to join with me in singing that song. Te aroha, te wakapono, te rangimarie, tato tatoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie, for your usual deeply thought, deeply planned, and deeply felt address. Our closing words are by the Reverend Eileen Kaplis. She was a Unitarian Universalist minister, and she died aged 93. And these are her words. "We are part now from one another. Let these be our thoughts. If that which is most holy lies within the human person, and if the greatest power in the world shines flickering and uncertain from each individual heart, then it is easy to see the value of human associations dedicated to nurturing that light. The couple, the family, the religious community. For the power of good in any one of us must at times waver. But when a group together is dedicated to nurturing the power of good, it is rare for the light to grow dim in all individuals at the same moment. So we borrow courage and wisdom from one another to warm us and keep us until we are together again." Rachel, could I ask you to extinguish the chalice, please? Could you join me in the words of extinguishing the chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.